My name is Joshua Gonzalez, 28 years old, born January of 1984, Sydney City, Australia. Just going to share with you a little bit about, I guess, my story and how everything that's happened, to lead me to the place where I am today. Before I do that though, there's a story I'd like to share with you. It's actually found in the Bible, because it has a lot to do with what I will be telling you about my story. In the Bible, in the book of Luke, chapter 15, there's a parable, a story that's told. It's called the story of the Prodigal Son. Some of you may know this story well. And kind of just to sum up this story for you, what it is that there's a father who is well off, and he has two sons. And in the area where he lives, where they lived, you'd actually, it was not uncommon for the father to, give an inheritance to the children, the inheritance before he actually passed away. Because whenever a father passed away, his inheritance would go to the elder son and then the other sons after him. And he has two sons, he has an older son and a younger son. And the younger son turns around one day and just basically says to his father, he just says, "Father, Dad, I don't want to live here anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. There's other things, that I want to do with my life. So please give me the inheritance which belongs to me so that I may go and basically live my life." And the father turns around and he's like, "I'm not going to force you, to stay here. If you want to go, you're free to go." And so the younger son takes his money and he goes, Bible says, goes to another country, and he spends his money on prodigal living. Prodigal living, if you want to put it, in today's terms, is pretty much you probably, went out and spent it on, nightclubs and drinking and drugs and prostitutes and all of that kind of stuff that money can buy, having fun, in the world's point of view. And he ends up, wasting so much money that, because he has people around him, I guess leeches you can call them, that are hanging around with him just because, he's probably always shouting drinks, whatever. And it gets to the point where this guy, he runs out of money, so he's got no more money left. And he's walking around, and he's got, nothing on him, not a penny to his name, can't even buy a bread roll to eat. And he walks past, some pigs that are eating. And he sees these pigs and they're eating, and they have their house and, their place where they live. And he's looking at these pigs and he's kind of like, look at these pigs, they have it so much better off than how I had it. They have something to eat, they have somewhere to sleep, and he didn't have any of that. So he kind of sits there and he's contemplating his life, and he's thinking about the things that he's done, and he gets to a point where he's just like pretty much thinking to himself, what have I done? I had it so good at my father's house. When I was living at home, I had everything I could ever want. I had food, I had a place to sleep, I had clothes, I had everything. Kind of just, what have I done? Look at the decisions I've made in my life and where it's led me. And he basically is at a point, where he's thinking, I need to go back home. I need to ask my father for forgiveness, because what I have done is just, look how stupid it was, right? So he's thinking of a plan on how his dad's going to accept him, because he's thinking, I've just sinned against my father. I've pretty much rejected him, and he says, the Bible says, he even said, I've sinned against heaven. How is my dad going to forgive me? And he starts remembering the servants in his father's house too, how they had it so good. The servants had food, they had clothes, they had beds, they had a room, they had everything they wanted. And he's going, maybe my father will take me back as a servant. Maybe if I go back and plead and beg him, he might at least take me back as a servant. So he, with that plan in mind, he goes and he goes back home on a journey back to his house. And it's almost as if the father was like waiting for his son to return, because the Bible says that as the man was not too far away from his house, his father actually saw him in the distance come, walking, towards the house. And as the son's walking towards the house, the Bible says that his father just pretty much dropped everything and just ran out to see his son. He just ran to see his son. And the Bible says that as soon as he got to his son, it's like as if the son was going to try to, explain himself and say, "Father, this, I've done this, I'm sorry." Like the father didn't even let him speak and just hugged him. And he hugged him, and he cried and he hugged him. And he was so happy that his son has come back. And when the son is kind of like, come back I'll come back as a servant, the father's like, no, like, you come back as my son. You are my son. I know that you repent. I know that you are truly sorry. And he forgave him and he took him back as his son. And it's a beautiful story, and the reason why I share that with you, as you will find out as my story goes on, why that story is so important to me. I guess to start off with my story, I was my father's from Spain, my mum's from Peru. I grew up with my South American side of the family, always in the Peruvian culture. It was very, very close to my heart. And I grew up like most teenagers, most kids in Australia. Always had everything that I needed. Never really went through poverty in any sense of the word. My father and my mother, when I was born, were members of the Baptist church, and my dad's always had a very strong belief in God, and it's something that he's always tried to share with me, since I was a little boy. And he'd always speak to me about God. He'd always try to get me to read the Bible, and there's a lot of lessons that my father taught me, through the scriptures, and he basically, I guess, put it in me since a little kid, that it's important to try to obey God and live right, like the Bible wants you to live. So my father would always teach me, it was important to obey God and to follow, what the Bible says. That, try to talk to me about the world and how the world was, and I'd take it all in. I'd always listen to him, I always appreciate all the things that he taught me. But to be honest, while I was in the Baptist church, I never really had a strong connection with God while I was attending this church, and I never really had a relationship with Jesus Christ. So I grew up like most normal kids in the church, when you don't have a strong connection to Christ. That the world, you go to school and you go out with your friends, and there's things of the world that you start to see, and it really kind of can captivate you, and really draw you in. And that happened with me, and one of the things that really drew me in from a young age was hip-hop music. Since I was in primary school, I just remember, like, I loved rap music. I loved this culture, and for some reason it really attracted me, and all these other things that were just, it was totally contrary to what I would learn at church and what my parents would teach me. But for some reason I ended up really loving the hip-hop culture. I loved kind of like the violence of the world. I'd read up on mafia, the mafia, the bosses of the mafia, and criminals and killers and things like that. And for some reason these things always really attracted me, since a young age. So hip-hop music was always a strong influence in my life, and as I grew up, I'd get to a point where I kind of really didn't want to be at church anymore. I remember telling my dad one day, like, I don't want to go to church anymore. And my dad, I could tell he was hurt, but I guess I put what I wanted, in front of what he wanted, what God wanted, and I didn't really attend church too much, and I got a little bit older and got to a point where I started to learn how to play the drums, and at this point, the church, I found out that they actually needed a drummer in the church. So I started, attending church on a regular basis, but it wasn't because I wanted to, get to know Jesus or anything like that. It was simply because I like to play the drums, so I could go to church and play the drums and have jams and things like that with some of the members of the church, and I'd be going to church for those reasons, Then I kept getting older and getting more into my hip-hop music and into the world and learning about things, And at one, I think I was about 17, 18 now, and I met a girl by the name of Tanya, and I met this girl, funny enough, at a nightclub, and I was attracted to her, and I wanted to get to know her more, and even though like I wasn't really a church guy in a sense, and I did believe in God. I always believed in God. I never really followed God though. One thing that my father always taught me when it came to women was just don't go out with girls to have a good time, in a sense of like respect women. He always taught me how to respect women, which is something that I learned from him. And he taught me that if I'm going to get serious with a girl, which is the only reason why I should be with a girl in the first place, is to get serious, is that make sure it's a Christian girl, because if you guys want to get married one day, if you're Christian and she's not Christian, you're gonna have a lot of dramas, and you know, you're gonna have problems with the family maybe, or you guys might have a kid one day, and you know, you're gonna want to raise the kid one way, she's gonna want to raise it another way. So make sure they're from the same religion, you know. And it was important for me for her to be Christian. So I just remember, you know, as we were getting to know each other, and you know, I was gonna ask her out. I was finding more things out about her, and I asked her, you know, are you a Christian? She said, yeah, I'm a Christian. I go to church. And I was really happy, and I was like, all right, cool. And I started a relationship with her. And you know, we started going out and that, and then we started talking about church and stuff. And you know, I'd go to church every Sunday because I played the drums there. I was a drummer at my church, you know. And I remember telling her one day, I'm going, you know, this Sunday we'll go to my church, next Sunday we'll go to your church. And she was like, we don't go to church on Sunday, we go to church on Saturday. And I was really confused, you know. I was like, what do you mean you go to church on Saturday? Like, Sunday's the day for church, you know. And she's like, no, we go to church on Saturday and this and that. I started to realize that there were, you know, she was a Christian, but there were certain things about her denomination that were different to anything I had ever experienced before. You know, she told me she was a Seventh-day Adventist, and I had never heard of what Seventh-day Adventists were. I didn't know who they were at all. So I'm starting to learn some things from her about her church. And I remember going back to my pastor and saying, you know, I'm going out with this girl, she's a Seventh-day Adventist, you know, this and that. She's a really good girl. And as soon as I mentioned the word Seventh-day Adventist, you know, they were kind of like, oh, like, stay away from those people, you know, you don't want to know those people, you know, they're going to brainwash you, you know, they're a cult, and they're this and they're that, and they're going to try to make you follow the law because they're legalists, they want to be like the Jews, all these things they'd say to me, right? And I was kind of like, oh, really? You know, and then I'd go back to her and I'd go, man, do you know that you guys are wrong, and that you guys do this and you guys do that? And I'm, you know, trying to convince her that she's wrong, and she's kind of like, you know, come to my church, check it out, you know, kind of, you know, see for yourself. So I started going to some of, you know, her church services, and I would talk to some people, and I would, you know, lay, you know, all the arguments I had, you know, against the church. And it was funny because I never really found or could find somebody that was able to really explain to me through the Bible why they believe what they believed. It was kind of like, you know, yeah, you got to keep the Sabbath, you got to do this, you got to do that, but not really why you got to do it. So I spent a lot of time, you know, trying to convince her that she was in the wrong church, and that, you know, I thought it was my mission to kind of get her out of there. Even though it's funny, you know, me thinking that, because what was I going to get her into? You know, I really didn't, you know, follow my beliefs, you know, the way that I was meant to as well, you know. You know, I was drinking, you know, all the time, going out to nightclubs and all that, and yeah, so that's what was happening. And I started to meet some new people, you know, through the Adventist church as well, and I met a group of guys that were they were into the hip hop music as well, you know, and I was always befriending people that were into the same type of music. And there was some guys, and they actually had a rap crew, you know, and for a long time I always wanted to rap, you know, but I guess I never had the guts to actually rap. And I got together with some of these guys. They had a crew, and they kind of like, you know, wanted to get some more people in the crew type of thing. And it so happened that, you know, one day they sent me a beat, you know, they gave me a beat, and they told me, you know, write a verse to this, you know, kind of like to suss out, you know, how, if I was any good or anything. And I went home and I wrote a verse, and I came back and I rapped the verse, and they were all like, wow, like, this is really good, man, like, you got to join our crew, you know. So I was like, all right, cool, you know, I'm in the crew, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm a rapper now, you know, I'm rapping and trying to be a rap artist, and my life kind of, you know, went in the direction of, like, I thought, you know, that's what my life was going to be. I was going to be a hip hop artist, you know. So I'd spend so much time doing my music, and I dedicated my life to the music, and just be, you know, always recording and writing rhymes and hanging out with the boys, and I loved it, you know, like, I loved that, you know, when that was happening, to be honest, you know. And you know, I thought it fulfilled me, you know, so I would pursue those things. And at the same time, like I said, you know, I was doing all of this, and then I was trying to learn about, you know, the Bible, sort of, you know, because I was trying to get Tanya out of the Seventh-day Adventist church. And as time went on, the music went, you know, progressed, and we got more friends that would start to hang around. And during this time, something happened that really, you know, kind of, I'd say, really kind of affected me in a major way. I was always into the hip-hop music, right? And I was always into the black hip-hop music, you know, the African-American hip-hop music, which was all that I could really get my hands on at the time. And around this time, you know, just after the year 2000 and that, the Hispanic, the Latino hip-hop scene kind of just blew up, and all of these rappers came out, and it really affected me in a major way, because like I'm a Latino, you know, I'm a Hispanic guy, and I'm rapping, you know, and there was an actual scene that really emerged, you know, that affected me, which was the Chicano rap scene, the whole Los Angeles type scene, you know, with that Chicano lifestyle and all that, and it really affected, you know, quite a few of us, and it swept me away, you know. Before I knew it, I was like, you know, talking like them, acting like them, dressing like them, and you know, the music changed, and it got real gangster, and trying to be a gangster, and because that's, you know, we thought, you know, we're Latinos, we're gangsters, you know, that's what we're meant to do, you know, and that affected me to the point where, like, you know, one day amongst, you know, some of the boys that we had at that time, we were really into this gang culture, you know, and one day it's like we decided to join a gang, you know, to actually form a gang, and we did that, and we all, you know, joined this gang, and then not only now am I, you know, a rap artist, hip hop artist, I'm also, you know, I'm also in a gang, you know, I'm also a gang member now, and that happened, you know, and so, you know, when the gang started and when it formed, you know, a lot of things changed, you know, especially the way I viewed life, and you know, I was, like I said, I was always attracted to this, you know, violence and this criminal activity and things like that, and it started to creep into my life in a major way, and you know, do what you do, you know, with the boys. I was always drinking and smoking, and you know, there was always drugs around, and you know, trying to pick fights and trying to, you know, kind of prove, you know, how tough you are, and you know, that's what I was trying to do for a long time, and you know, around that time too, you know, just before that happened, you know, or while, you know, at the time that happened, I had another good friend of mine who I would talk to a lot, and this friend of mine was a Muslim friend, you know, and we would talk a lot about religion and stuff, and he would try to convert me to Islam, and I would try to convert him to Christianity, and you know, we'd be doing this while we were smoking weed, and it was kind of like, you know, obviously, you know, he didn't convince me, I didn't convince him, you know, none of us had any power to really convince each other, because, you know, we're high while we're doing it, but we would talk a lot about stuff, and what happened as well was that I was, you know, friends with him for a long time, but around 2001, something happened, you know, with him that, I should have mentioned this earlier, but it ties into the story, which is basically in 2001, you know, September 11th happened, and when that happened, like everybody else, you know, I was there sitting at home watching TV, you know, like everyone watching the news, and the media was saying, you know, how it was the Arabs and it was Al-Qaeda and the Arabs did this. So my friend, you know, being Muslim, being an Arab, you know, I remember going to him the next day to speak to him about it, and I was angry, you know, and I was kind of like, you know, I saw the people that died that day, and I remember going up to him kind of saying, you know, like, bro, like why'd you just do that, man, you know, like that wasn't cool, man, that was bad, and I was angry and stuff, and he's like, bro, like, what if I told you, man, that the Arabs didn't do it, you know, it was America, they did it themselves. And when he said that, I was kind of like, bro, you're crazy, man, there's no way, you know, how can you guys do that, and then you're trying to blame America? Like, I thought he was insane, to be honest, you know, when he said that to me. And he just turns around and he's like, bro, you got the internet, right? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, go home and research a group called the Freemasons, you know, and learn about these guys and find out, you know, what's really going on in the world and that. And he gave me a little documentary about the Freemasons, and I went home and I saw the actually it was audio. I heard the documentary, and I read up on these people, and I started spinning out, because I was like, man, this stuff is for real, like these people exist, you know. And I started just like spending so much time reading up on this stuff, and to the point where I would just, every person I would meet, everywhere I would go, I would talk to people about the Masons and the Illuminati, and I would just be telling people, like, this is real, this is what's going on with the world, you know. And it got to the point where I kind of became known as the conspiracy nut amongst people that I knew. I was that crazy conspiracy theorist guy. And so some people would listen to me, some people would think I'm just a total whack job, you know, but I'd still talk about it anyways, because I was passionate. I believed that that was the truth, you know, that's what's going on in the world. So I would talk about it all the time, and you know, going back to, you know, like, you know, I'd, you know, being with the boys and, you know, and stuff like that with my boys, like amongst my boys, they knew me for that as well, you know, and time went on, and I would study so much, and I guess just a bit of a warning to anybody out there who's really getting into this stuff, like, this stuff is real, it's true, you know, but like a lot of stuff in the world, if you don't have a strong, if you're not grounded in the truth, if you don't have a strong connection with Jesus Christ, these things can really mess up your faith, which is what happened to me. It got to a point where I would read so much into this stuff, and it got into the whole Luciferian stuff and how they worship the devil. But it's not that because they worship him, it's because of the lies kind of that they believe through him, that he didn't really, I was reading stuff about, when he gave the fruit to Adam and Eve, that he was actually, opening their eyes to things that God didn't want them to know. All of these kind of messed up things, right? And it got to the point where I really started to question my faith, and sometimes I would even doubt my faith, and you got to be careful, when you get into anything, make sure you're grounded in the truth, because if you're not, it can really affect you. So, I'm living this life now, and I'm doubting about stuff. I'm still going to church though, because I play the drums and that, and every now and then I go to the Adventist church, and I would just go because, even though I didn't believe what they believed, I would go sometimes honestly to try to convince people from that church that they were wrong. And then I'm in the gang as well, and I'm doing this hip hop music, and I'm just like, my life's just a mess in a sense, because I'm just always getting drunk and stoned and doing all of these things, meant to be a Christian, right? So one day, funny enough, one of the boys from the gang, he calls me up and he's like, bro, like, I got this pamphlet in my letterbox, and it's about some group of seminars that are happening, this series called the Prophetic Code. And he's like, man, like, they got the pyramid with the one eye, and they're going to be talking about secret societies and that. And like, bro, we should go, man. Like, he calls me because he knew if anyone would be interested in this stuff, it would be me, right? So he's calling me and he's telling me we should go. And I'm like, kind of at this point, I had enough of all of this stuff, to be honest. And I was kind of like, bro, I don't want to go. I don't want nothing to do with it. I don't want to know about it. He was like, all right. He calls me up like the next day, and he's like, bro, like, we really need to go, man. Like, we should go, man. These things, I think it's going to be good and that, And I'm kind of like, bro, like, I told you already, man, leave me alone. I don't want to know about this stuff, leave me alone. So he's like, all right, He calls me up the next day and he's like, bro, we should go, man. Like, come on, man, come with me, man. I don't want to go by myself, And I'm like, bro, all right, man, kind of like, just to get you off my back, man, we'll go, So I'm like, all right, we'll go. And we went to this thing one day, and we get there, and I remember rocking up to it was done at a university and in a big room, and there was all of these, signs everywhere, and they had, the symbols of the ancient mystery religions, and they had the pyramid with the one eye and all that stuff. And I was going, all right, man, this might be interesting, I guess. Okay. So this guy walks out by the name of Lyle Southwell, and he comes out and he presents himself, and he's like, I'm Lyle, and there's something I want to do though before I get into the presentation. He says that he wants everybody to know that he's a Christian, and before he talks, he wants to pray. And I was kind of like, wow, I was spinning out at this point. I didn't expect this whatsoever, because all these studies that I had done about, the Illuminati and the Masons and all that stuff, nowhere could I ever find like Christians talking about it, or people trying to lead you to the Bible or Jesus, for that matter. Because, I would hear about people that were always talking about how this is real. I even heard one bloke, David Icke, who said that these guys all worship the devil, the Masons and that the devil exists, that's all real, but then he says God's not real. And I was like, man, like, how confused is that guy, eh? Like, how can you say God, like, the devil exists and God doesn't exist? And these are the type of people that I would, get information from, but at the same time, I was like, confused, right? So this guy comes on the scene one day, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to talk about this stuff, and I'm a Christian. So I was like, all right, cool. I was really excited. He just got my attention from that moment. So I'm listening, and the whole thing finished, and I loved it, and I thought it was so good. And I was like, I gotta introduce myself to this guy, man. I gotta meet this guy. I gotta talk to him and tell him a little bit about, what I look at, what I study and what I know and stuff. And I remember going up to him and going, hey man, like, I'm Josh, that was awesome, I gotta ask you, you said you're a Christian, right? He's like, yeah, I'm a Christian. I'm like, all right, cool. So what denomination are you, And he's like, oh, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. And at that moment I was like, what? You guys, oh man, Seventh-day Adventists? And I start going, man, you guys teach about the law, and you guys teach this, and I'm just trying to lay into him, about the things I thought were wrong with the church. And he just basically turns around, in all humility. He was a very humble man, and he's like, if it's all right with you, I wouldn't mind coming to your house and doing some Bible studies, and kind of like we can get to the bottom of these things, And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, like, because no one's really explained to me why they believe what they believe, you know, like solid biblical, you know, truths. And I was like, all right, you know, I got nothing to lose. But at the same time, to be honest, I told him to come over because I thought that I could convince him why he was wrong, you know. And he would come over, you know, week after week, and we'd study, and I'd always have like a list like this big of arguments against the Seventh-day Adventist Church, you know, and he'd go through them one by one, and he'd show me in the Bible every single time where I was wrong, through the Bible alone, you know. And he taught me the truth about the Sabbath and all of these wonderful truths. And then, you know, when all of that stuff ran out, then I'd start going on Ellen White and trying to talk about how she's a false prophet. And then one by one, he'd show me how it's either, you know, misinterpretations or people that have taken what she's written out of context, or they're just blatant lies, you know. And it basically got to the point where I had no arguments left whatsoever. I couldn't throw anything more at him. And I had no, you know, what could I do? You know, I had to be humble. I had to say, all right, that's the truth. Like, you got me, man. Like, I can't do anything here. And one of the truths that was really big, you know, a big thing for me was, you know, the Sabbath. You know, that was a big truth. And I remember as soon as I learned that, like, I was like, man, like, I was like, kind of like when I learned about the Masons, you know, and I had to go and tell everybody about the Masons. As soon as I learned about the Sabbath, I remember I got to tell everybody about this because I go to church on Sunday. We're Sunday keepers, you know. And I remember the first person I told, you know, was my dad, you know, and I turned around to my dad, and my dad, you know, like my pastor, you know, before, they didn't like the fact that I was going out with an Adventist girl. They didn't like the fact that I was doing Bible studies with an Adventist pastor. And they didn't like the Adventist church whatsoever. So I turn around now and I'm like, Dad, like, we gotta, you know, keep the Sabbath, you know, it's true, it's from the Bible. And my dad's like, no, what's wrong with you, man? They've brainwashed you. And we get into arguments and stuff. And I had learnt it, but I didn't study it, so I couldn't explain it properly to him. So we would just go back and forth, arguing. And man, like, it was so serious that sometimes we, like me and my dad, actually, we didn't talk for a long time, you know, because of this Sabbath thing and some other things that the Adventist church teaches, you know, which I quickly just want to throw in here, you know. It's like, some of you Seventh-day Adventist youths out there, like, you really don't understand how precious this truth is, you know. There's a lot of people that have gone through so much pain to follow this commandment as God commands us to do it. And I see sometimes that some of the youth within the church, they just disregard this commandment like it doesn't matter. And it's such an important commandment because it really shows where your loyalty is at. It really shows where your heart is at, and if you're willing to obey God or not, you know. And you know, if you're a Seventh-day Adventist youth and you're listening to this and you know, you know in your heart that you're not following what you know in your heart is the truth and what you should be following, I just pray, you know, that you really pray to God about it and that you really make a serious decision to go back to the truth that you know is the truth, and that you have a responsibility. Don't disregard it, you know. And getting back to the testimony, you know, I learned all of these truths. Now, while I was learning about all of these truths, and while I was doing Bible studies and I was getting to know Jesus in a way that I had never known him before, and I had been studying the Bible in a way that I had never studied before. I was in the church for, like, the Baptist church for like 20 so years, and I thought I knew the Bible and stuff until I started studying with this Adventist pastor. I learned the Bible, like really learned things from the Bible I had never learned before. So, as would have it, you know, while you're getting, you know, bigger knowledge of the Bible and you're really learning things, you get convicted of certain things. And one of those things that convicted me was that this life that I'm living, you know, because I'm in a gang, I smoke weed, I drink alcohol, I'm trying to be gangster, I'm trying to be hard, I'm trying to look, you know, do violence, whatever, you know, comes my way. And I'm just doing all of these things that I shouldn't be doing, you know, and it really started to mess with my head because I'd read the Bible and I know what Jesus was telling me, you know, saying like, you're not to live your life this way, you know, you're expected to live your life, especially when you know truth and when you know Him, you're expected to live your life in a certain way, right? So I was just like, man, what do I do? And you know, it was like playing with my head, and like, it's like God was telling me, it was like, this gang that you're in is kind of like, you can't be there, you know, you can't be a Christian and be involved in these things, so you need to get out of this gang. And it was like, wow, how do I do this, you know, because like these boys were like, they were my boys, man, they were brothers to me, you know, I love them, you know, and you got to understand, there is like a thing in the back of your mind knowing that if you're gonna get out of something like that, it's like you might lose your friends and your brothers, you know. And I was kind of faced in a position of, who do I obey? Who do I put first? Is it God? Is it the gang? Like, and I was just so convicted in my heart, and I was like, yeah, I got to follow God, and I have to obey God, and I have to do what God wants me to do. So I remember going there with one of my other friends who had been doing some studies with me and stuff, and I went to see one of the boys, and you know, I went to see one of the boys, and I went to see him because like I really respected him as a friend, you know what I mean? And I remember going there and speaking to him and going kind of like, you know, like, man, bro, like, I've been doing these studies, and like I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't do this anymore. This is not who I am, you know. I'm a Christian, you know. I'm a Christian. I believe in God, you know, and I want to follow God, you know. I want to live my life following God. And basically said, you know, like, I'm out. Like, I can't be in this anymore, you know. And not much was said that day, and like I kind of left there, and things I thought were okay, and before I know it, like, I'm getting all of these calls from, you know, all the boys and stuff, and people are calling me now and kind of like insulting me, and people are telling me like, bro, what did you do, man? How can you disrespect the crew and all of these things? And man, like, it was really hard time for me, because like a lot of my boys, my brothers, people that were really close to me, they turned on me like kind of overnight, and I had lost a lot of friends, you know, that were really close to my heart. It's like I didn't want to lose the friendship, I didn't want to lose the boys, I just wanted to follow God, and I just couldn't be a part of that anymore, you know. And it was a really hard time in my life, you know. Those who were close to me, like, they know how much I was hurting, man. I was hurting because I really loved these guys, like really loved them, eh? And like, I still got love for everyone. Like, the truth be told, you know, I got no bad feelings toward anybody, you know. But I have to do what God tells me to do. I have to do what my heart tells me, you know. So I did that. I made that decision, and then I was like, you know, there's so many things in my life that need to change. So that was one of them, you know. I know I needed to stop smoking. I know I needed to stop drinking. There was one thing though that I wasn't willing to fully let go of, and I thought that I could still do it, you know, in the right way, and that thing was music. I wasn't willing to let go of music. I wanted to be a hip hop artist. That was like my goal. But my music changed, you know. So no longer was I doing gangster music or swearing and things like that. I said I can't do that anymore. So I said I'm going to do positive music now, you know. And I decided to stay in the music industry, which was a mistake, you know. Now that I look back on it, it was a huge mistake. And you know, the music industry, you know, I'll say it straight, you know, it's an evil industry. Who's behind the music industry, the secular music industry of the world? It's not God. God's not there, you know what I mean? God's not found there, you know, and you find someone else there, and it's just a real evil industry. There's so much stuff that goes on in that industry that's just, I don't even have enough time right now to get into that, you know. But, you know, I guess just, you know, most people know what I'm talking about, right? But I stuck around, you know, and I formed the crew with a couple of Māori boys, two of my close friends at the time, and we started doing some positive music, you know, and we were doing some, you know, cool music, kind of R&B, hip-hop stuff, you know. These boys could sing like most islanders, man. They're talented as, you know, and they can just sing their lungs out. So we'd be doing all this music, and I would stick around. But while I was there, like, I was in a huge battle, a constant battle, because there was always weed around, and I was a pothead, man, like trying to stop smoking, you know. And there was always alcohol around. There was, you know, we'd go out and there was always women around, and it's very hard to be a Christian and to be in the music industry, you know. But I thought, you know, and I put it in my head that I can be a positive influence in the music industry, that's what I'm meant to do, you know. I'm meant to be this positive influence in a dark world, kind of be like a light in the darkness, you know. And I thought that was my talent, and that God had given me that talent so that I can reach people in the music industry. But the more I was involved in it, the deeper I got into the music. It's like I said, it was just a constant battle, and I'd find myself at times smoking and at times drinking, and I was convicted I shouldn't be doing that, and I was just like, it was really hard, you know. And I remember, you know, like, I got married after that, and after I got married, that part of the music with the two boys kind of died down a bit, because I went on my honeymoon. I went on, you know, I was spending time with my wife, and that kind of died down, and those boys ended up doing something else, you know, with some other people. So I kind of stopped doing the music with them for a bit, and I was still doing my own music. And then I ended up I ended up joining another crew of friends that I had grown up with, you know, some of the boys I had grown up with, and I was still doing my music and stuff, and like, you know, everybody knows, you know, because I was always trying to talk about God, you know. But I got to admit, like, something I have to admit, and I have to apologize to a lot of people, because Like, I was a huge hypocrite for a long time, you know, because I was having a constant battle with weed and alcohol, and it was because I didn't have a strong relationship with Jesus Christ. So I had no victory over sin whatsoever, because, you know, Jesus Christ wasn't there fighting it for me, because I wasn't letting him. I wasn't, you know, calling on him all the time, and I'd be the type of guy who'd be out, you know, trying to talk to people about Jesus with a joint in one hand and a beer in the other, and a lot of people must have been looking at me like, man, like, you know, kind of like, look at this guy, you know, like, I know nobody would have listened to me, you know, and so I got to apologize to a lot of people, because, you know, like, I was misrepresenting Christianity. Like, I was big time misrepresenting Christianity, and that's not what a real Christian does. That's not how a real Christian acts, you know, and that's how I was acting for a while. And like I said, I was in a battle, you know, smoking, not smoking, smoking, not smoking. I got to a point where I really just, like, it got to me so bad that I totally gave up smoking and drinking, like, completely. And I was trying so hard to live a good life and be righteous, and I was going to church so much and doing Bible studies and all of that stuff, you know, and something terrible happened around this time, you know, in my family's life, you know, and we had someone that was really close to us, you know, who was my cousin by marriage, who was out one night at King's Cross and got involved in an incident, and he ended up getting pushed during a scuffle, and he fell down and he hit his head, and he got knocked unconscious, and he got sent to the hospital, but he never woke up, you know, and from the consciousness, you know, he went on life support, and he was on hospital for a while. He was there on life support, and the doctors couldn't tell us whether he was going to make it or not. And, you know, I was, like I said, I was at church at this time trying to do the right thing, and then we were praying for him so much. We were just praying and praying and praying, and I remember coming across something in the Bible that said that, you know, when somebody is sick and they need healing, that you get the pastor and the elder to go and pray for them. And I called the pastor and the elder, and we went and we prayed. They anointed him with the oil. We prayed over him, and we were praying and praying and praying. And one day the doctors are like, he's not coming back whatsoever. You know, he's not going to make it. We have to pull the plug. And they pulled the plug, and I was just so confused, man. I was just so hurt, and my family was suffering, and I saw my cousin suffering, and it really hurt me so much, you know, and I got angry because I thought, you know, God should have done something there, and I felt that he didn't, you know, and I was just angry, and we were like, you know, all of these things were going on, and a couple of days later, a few days later, they had the funeral, you know, and we went to the funeral service, and that day that the funeral was on, it was such a hard day for all of us in the family. It was such an emotional day. Emotions were running wild. Like, you know, it was a painful day, you know. It was just crying and just hurt and all of that. And my family, who organized the funeral, after the funeral, they had the after service at an RSL club. And I remember going there because, you know, all my family was there and I wanted to go. I knew I shouldn't have gone there because I didn't want to drink anymore. I was really trying not to drink and not trying to be around, you know, drinking and smoking and that kind of stuff. But I went there because of my family, and you know, deep down inside I was a bit angry at the end of the day. I guess there would have been some intention on me drinking that day, and that's why I went there. But nevertheless, I ended up there, and when I went there, one of the boys, one of my family members, my cousin I think it was, someone was there and said kind of like, hey man, like, do you want to have a beer? And, you know, I was like, you know what, man, like, I've had a hard day, man, like, this has been a terrible day. Like, yeah, I'll have a beer, you know, I'll have a beer, give me a beer, bro, you know. And I remember I had a beer, you know, one turned into 2, into 3, into 4, into 5. I probably had like 15 beers that night, you know. And that night, that day, so it was in the afternoon, because that night, after all of that, I ended up back at my dealer's house buying weed again. And man, before I knew it, I had literally become an alcoholic and a chronic pot smoker, you know. And my life started to spiral out of control. Every single part of my life was just going down. I was married with a child at home, and I was out with the boys all the time, drinking and smoking. I was coming home like at 3 o'clock in the morning, drunk, stoned. You know, my wife almost left me 2 times, you know. And my marriage was like on the rocks, like on the rocks. We did not have a good relationship during this time. My work was suffering, you know. I was on performance management at work. I was going in late, just taking really long breaks, and just, you know, every part of my life was going downhill. My family, we didn't get along at this time. We were fighting a lot. I was fighting a lot with my brother and people that were close to me. And if you can just imagine, like, all the important parts of your life would, for me at that point, that would just messed up, completely messed up. And it was like I was sinking deeper and deeper and deeper, you know. Like when I decided that day to drink, you know, which was a dumb thing that I did. It's like there's a saying that says, you know, you give the devil a little bit and he'll take the whole lot, you know. I felt that's what happened, you know, and man, did he take the whole lot with me, you know. And don't ever think that you're stronger than the devil, you know what I mean, especially when you're not with Jesus Christ. Don't ever think that, you know, you can do something just a little bit and that, you know, it's going to be all right, and that you're not going to, you know, you're going to be able to get out of that and make it right. Don't ever fool yourself with that stuff, you know. And, you know, I'm here to tell you that that's not true. That's not going to happen. And yeah, like my life is just out of control, you know. And one thing that's really interesting that when I look back on is that even though every single part of my life was just was just ruined, wrecked, on the verge of like destruction in a sense, you know. Especially my spiritual life, my spiritual walk was just non-existent, you know, because how am I going to be studying the Bible, going to church when I'm always stoned and drunk, you know? I would go to church, couldn't wait till church was over so I can go see the boys and get drunk and stoned. Like, it's ridiculous, man. And it's funny how when all of those parts of my life were really going downhill, my music seemed to get better, you know. And it's like, it's weird, man. I don't want to get too much into it, but I could really see the devil at play because he wanted me to stay in this lifestyle, you know. He didn't want me to have the life that or live the life I knew I should have been living, you know. And my music was getting so good that, you know, I was finally getting my mixtape done, almost finished, you know. I wanted to do an album, and you know, video clips were getting done with the crew, and you know, there was talk of, you know, record deals, and all of this stuff was happening, you know. And it was like I was literally just about to make it, you know, finally, after 11 years in the rap industry. And as my life was getting worse and worse, also my music got worse again, you know. I started swearing, I started getting all hard, trying to be gangster and all that in my music again. And all of that was going downhill too, you know. And something I think, you know, you look back and it's like, you know, I kind of get an idea of, you know, like why, you know, I started to find out maybe that some of my old friends from the gang and that were not too happy with my life, you know, and my lifestyle, you know, and I can understand because, like, you know, I did leave to be a Christian, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, I pretty much ended up worse than I was when I was in the gang, you know. I was just messed up. So, you know, I'm hearing, you know, things here and there, how, you know, they're after me and things like that, and I'm just like, all right, like, I hadn't seen them for so long that, you know, I guess it's not until something happens that you don't react or you don't realize, you know, how serious things are. So I was just still living my life and still coming home really late, you know. My marriage was still almost ruined and all of these things. While this was happening though, mind you, like, I would still pray to God, you know. Even though sometimes I would pray when I'm drunk, when I'm stoned, I would still pray, because the reason why I would pray is because I could see my life disintegrating before my eyes. I could see how everything was going downhill, and I could see how no matter how much I tried, I couldn't gain any victory, and I would get worse and worse and worse. So I would just basically beg God at times and saying, God, please, like, look at this. Like, I can't do anything. I can't control this. Like, the more I try, I get worse. Like, I need you here because I can't do anything here. Like, I'm getting worse and worse and worse. Like, I need you to do something. And I was begging him, like, please do something. Do something to snap me out of this, to get me out of this lifestyle that I'm living, this life that I'm living. And I was scared, man, when I would pray that prayer, because I know that sometimes it takes something drastic for God to wake you up, you know. God will never allow you to go through something hard, to go through something painful, to go through something you think is terrible. He would never allow you to go through that unless he knew that you were going to be better at the end of it or after it than what you were before. You know, God is good. God loves us, you know, and he doesn't want any of us to suffer. But sometimes he lets us suffer a little bit because he knows that it's for our own good and it's going to benefit us, you know, benefit us later on. So, you know, as I said, I'm living this life. One day I was filming a video clip one night. Actually, it was a night time. I was filming a video clip with my crew and we were at a studio. And while all of this is happening, right, and we're filming this video clip, and it's probably about 1 o'clock in the morning or something. You know, we were just about to wrap it all up, and I had been drinking so much that night, and I was stoned, and I was just wasted, completely wasted. And I was at that point where I just had to, like, I had to find a bed to just fall down, you know. And we were gonna leave, and there was like three of my friends that were there, you know, doing the clip with me, and 2 of the boys in the crew and 1 of my friends that was there, and they were wasted as well, you know, except for the guy who was driving, who drove us there. And as we're about to wrap it all up, and that, you know, the owner of the studio comes to me and he says, he's like, bro, I don't know how they found out, but your old friends are outside, and they're outside, and they're wanting to get you, you know. They're here, they're talking about how they want to get you. They know that you're inside. And what I got told, you know, to be honest, I didn't really see anybody that day. I knew that they were there, obviously, but I didn't actually see anybody. I was told that there was 2 carloads of them. They were in 2 cars, and I was told that they had knuckle busters, that they had baseball bats, that they had someone told me one of them had a gun, you know. And they're basically telling me, and like I told you, I was completely wasted, and they're telling me, like, bro, these guys are outside and they want to get you, man. Like, I told them to leave, but I really don't think they're gonna leave. Like, they're here to get you, you know. And they had tried to get in through the back of the studio, and they weren't allowed in, and the guy's like, look, I told them to go, but I don't think they're gonna go, and my bet is that they're gonna be trying to get in through the front any minute. So before I knew it, they're like banging on the front door, you know, trying to get in through the front door, and like, you know, me and my friends that were there, we were outnumbered, and we were like in no condition to defend ourselves whatsoever. Like, you know, and I'm thinking, like, what am I gonna do, you know? And you know, the guys that were with me, man, like, you know, they had family and kids and things like that, and I was like, man, like, I can't get them involved in this stuff. Like, it's my problem, you know what I mean? So, like I said, I couldn't go out and defend myself, because, you know, that was outnumbered. So the only thing I could think of was, like, I need to get out of here. So while they were trying to get into the front, I told my boy who had the car at the back, I told him, bro, let's go, man. Let's hope there's no one at the back. Let's get in your car and let's get out of here. So we run into his car, we jump in the car, and we start driving off, you know. And we drove, we got out of there, we got to a red light, and I just remember feeling kind of like, man, like relief, you know. And it was literally as I was exhaling, you know, as I'm like, you know, as I'm exhaling, I hear the 2 cars like screech up behind us, and doors slam, and people getting out of cars and coming towards the car, and like, we're just there, and it's like one guy apparently came to the car and was went to hit me with a baseball bat, and I was in the front seat. And my friend, like, he'll tell you to this day, that was with me, he says that he doesn't know what it was, but at that moment, the bat was about to hit the car. He said something made him move the car like forward, like about that much. So as to when the bat connected with the car, it hit the window that was behind me. And he hit it so hard that it was so loud, like, I thought it was a gunshot. The window shattered into like 1,000 pieces. And it was that hard that, like, I believe, like, they were trying to get my head through the windscreen of the, you know, where I was sitting. So this happens, you know, the thing happens, and they're all like surrounding the car. And I told my friend, I'm like, bro, like, go man, let's get out of here, bro, go, you know. And we were at a red light. He just ran the red light, and before we knew it, we were on a high-speed chase, man, like down the Great Western Highway from about like Mount Druitt area all the way down to almost Parramatta, like a high-speed chase, going through red lights, through huge intersections. You know, it's a miracle now that I look back, you know, and I've driven past there again, you know, after all of this, and I look at the intersections that we drove past, and it's a miracle, man, how we didn't have like a head-on collision or anything, you know. And we're on a high-speed chase, we're going down this road, and it was literally like in the movies, like those chases that you see in the movies. And like, all I could, you know, I'd look back and I'd see the cars kept coming, and they kept coming closer, and we're trying to drive, and somehow, man, like, miraculously we managed to outdrive them, you know. And the car that my friend was driving in was nowhere near as good as the cars they had from what we could see, and somehow we managed to outdrive them. And I remember at that point I was like tripping out, you know. I was kind of like, whoa, man, like, you know, in my mind, like, my life almost just ended, you know what I mean? Like, I was just tripping out. I called my wife up, and I'm like, you know, like, lock all the doors to the apartment, the balcony, everything. Just make sure that everything's closed. Lock everything up because there's like security, all around the apartment, and kind of just make everything's closed. This is what almost happened. Like, I thought that they had shot at me, at that moment. And I'm like, I'm not gonna come home right now because I thought they might have been waiting for me there or something. And so I went to my friend's house and was chilling out there for a bit, and I was just like tripping out, and like I had some weed on me, so I decided to smoke. And it's funny because sometimes, or most of the time, or at least in my case, like you smoke to try to kind of calm yourself down and calm your nerves, and you drink for those reasons. And it's like, instead of doing that, it kind of just made things worse, so I was kind of like, a bit shook up, to be honest, at this point. And obviously all of my boys and all of my friends, because I had a lot of friends in a lot of places, and everybody heard of, somehow word got through about what happened, and like my friends that I was with, and that they were angry, they were really angry about what happened, and there was a lot of love for my family, and people were just really angry, and I remember people starting to come up to me like left, right, and center, telling me, bro, we've got to do something about this, man. We need to sort this out. We need to go get these guys. We need to stop them once and for all, because if we don't stop this now, this is never going to stop. It's always going to continue. And like, I'm getting all these calls, and everybody's like this, there was meetings that were held, and it was funny because like, I didn't realize how many friends I actually had until this happened, It was like every connection possible that I could even have, and in one point, a week after this happened, I actually ended up at a bikie clubhouse too, through a connection I had with a bikie club, and I was going to get, trying to get help from these guys as well, and it got to a point where there was basically like almost an army of people that were willing to say, bro, like we'll help you, man, we'll help you sort this out. And a lot of these guys too, they have families, they have kids and stuff, and I'm kind of like in my mind thinking like I'm tripping out, because I'm like, man, like what's about to pop off because of me, because of my actions, because of the things that I've done. There's like a war about to break off in Sydney, in Western Sydney. Like, people are gonna die, like literally die, or end up in jail. Like, this is not gonna like have any good or happy outcomes to it, you know what I mean? And I'm getting call, like, day after day I'm getting calls. Like, one day in particular, I remember getting, a call from one of my friends who was just fuming, and he was like, bro, I got 15 guys right now, bro. They're all strapped. They all got gats. They're all ready to go, man. They want to do this now. And I would get call after call, and as much as like I wanted to sort this problem out, I wanted peace, for my life and my family. Something was always telling me, like, don't do it that way. That's not how you do this, And for some reason, it's just like I couldn't ever manage to say, yeah, like they'll give the green light type of thing to say, yeah, like, let's do this, And I'm just kind of like thinking, how am I going to do this, how am I going to solve this issue? What's going to happen here? And I remember I was at home one day, and I was sober and I was straight. And the reason, why I was sober is because I had literally run out of money to buy any weed or to buy any alcohol or anything. And I was at home by myself, and I was just like contemplating my life. I was even having, thoughts of like ending it, because look at all this trouble that's come to my life, that's happening. I thought my life was just ruined. There's no way I'm going to get out of this. And I'm kind of like stressing out at home about everything that's happening, And I remember kind of doing something like this, where like I kind of just like looked up, and when I looked up, I saw on my wife's desk there was a Bible that was there, and the Bible just got my attention, And I looked at it and I was like, nah, like, I got to sort this out, you know what I mean? I have to sort this out. And for some reason, it's like I couldn't stop looking at this Bible, I kept looking at it, and it started to play with my head like massive, and I started to think about stuff, you know what I mean? And I started to think about it, and I'm like, somehow I started to remember about those prayers that I would have, how I would ask God, and I would say, God, like, do something to get me out of this, do something to snap me out of this life. And I started thinking about stuff, and I started thinking, could what happened that night, could this have been the wake-up call that I finally needed to do the right thing for once, to for once surrender to Jesus Christ, to for once give my life completely to Jesus Christ, to for once let go of all of these things that are in the world that are distracting me, that are stopping me from having that relationship and that connection to Jesus that I've always known and wanted to have, right? And I'm thinking, could this have been it, you know? So, you know, all these thoughts and the Bible just kind of led me to prayer, you know, and I found myself praying, and I'm on my knees, you know, and I'm in my room, and I'm praying and I'm asking God, and I started realizing how He saved my life, and I started realizing how through my life, how many times He has saved my life, and how good He has always been to me, and how He's blessed me with a beautiful wife, a beautiful daughter, you know, a good family, great parents. Like, I started thinking about all of these things, and I started thinking like how stupid I've been, man. And I'm like, man, how could I have done this? How could I have been such a fool? You know what I mean? Look at what I've done to myself. I have nobody to blame but myself, right? And I'm on my knees at this point, and I'm begging God for forgiveness. I'm just begging Him for forgiveness, and I'm like, God, forgive me, please, forgive me, God. Like, look how stupid I've been, so stupid, you know. And at the same time, I'm thinking, but there's no way that God's going to take me back. There's no way He's going to forgive me, because I have just rejected Him. I slapped Him in the face, I spat in His face, and I've just gone out and done what I wanted to do and live my life how I wanted to live. And now I have to deal with the consequences. God's not going to help me. But I'm begging Him at the same time, and I'm asking Him, and I'm begging Him, and I'm pleading with Him, and I'm asking Him, Lord, please give me a sign. Give me a sign that lets me know that I'm still okay with You. Give me a sign that lets me know that You're going to take me back now that I want to come back. And I remember opening my eyes from the prayer, and the first thing that caught my eye and got my attention was some old study guides that were on the desk as well, next to the Bible study guides. And it's like something was telling me, open up those books, your answer is in there. Open up that study guide, your answer is found in there. So I don't know how I just went over, I grabbed the Bible study guide, I opened it up, like randomly opened it up to the first page I opened up, and right there on that page was the story of the prodigal son. Remember that story I told you at the start, right? I knew that story. And I know in that story that son was repentant, that son was at a point where he was just like, look how foolish I've been, look what I've done with my life, you know, my father gave me everything and I've rejected him. And that son wanted to go to the father, and I knew that in that story, when that son went back to the father, I knew that the father took him back, that he hugged him, that he kissed him, that he said, son, I take you back as my son. And I felt right there and there that God was saying to me, He was saying to me, Josh, you've sinned against me. Josh, you have left me, you have forsaken me, you have gone out and done what you wanted to do. And now you're in trouble, and now you are realizing for the first time how much you really truly need me. And I know in your heart that you are repentant, and I know in your heart that you want to do the right thing now with all your heart this time. And He said to me, I forgive you. I felt that love and I felt that forgiveness. It was just such an amazing feeling that moment right there, I was convicted like never before. And that moment right there, I decided to give my life completely to Christ, to surrender everything to Jesus Christ like I had never done before. All of these things, like He was showing me those things that I was still holding on to. And I knew in my heart, I have to get rid of these things. One of them was music. I couldn't be involved in that industry. I couldn't be doing those things, because Jesus Christ has not only saved my life, He has not only forgiven me, but I knew in my heart that He had also given me the responsibility to share with others what He had done for me, and to share with others about His love, and to let everybody know that He loves everybody just as much as He loves me, that He will forgive anyone just as He has forgiven me, that what He has done for me, He is willing and wanting to do it to everybody else. And I'm like, I need to dedicate my life to Christ. Like, it convicted me, right? And I was like, I got to give up everything. I got to give up everything. So the next day I went to the boys and I was like, boys, the music thing, I'm out. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to follow Jesus Christ. I'm going to really follow Jesus Christ. The smoking, the drinking, you'll never see me smoking again. I was telling her, I want to stop this, you know. I don't want to do these things anymore. And I also was feeling convicted, you know, that I have to really, really start getting involved in some kind of ministry or something, you know, because I can't waste my time anymore, you know. It's like I had realized at that point that I had wasted so much time, and I, you know, reading and studying Paul, I realized how Paul had realized as well at one point that, you know, it's like he said, every moment of my life up until this point has been a complete waste of time. I cannot afford to waste any more time. There is a job that I have to do. There is a reason for my existence. There's a mission that God has set me out on, and I have to obey, you know. So I told him that, you know, I was not going to do any of these things anymore. And one of the things I also told him was that thanks for all the help. Like, thank you for basically wanting to stand by me and wanting to go and fight for me and fight with me. But this is a battle that you're not going to fight, and this is a battle that I'm not going to fight. Jesus Christ is going to fight this battle, because I belong to Jesus now. I belong to Jesus. I am a son of Jesus. He is my Father. God is my Father. And the Bible tells me how the Father protects his children. The Bible tells me that if I give my heart to him, that if I surrender everything to him, that if I call upon his name, he will deliver me and he will protect me. And I knew in my heart, from that moment, when all of this happened, I knew in my heart that I had nothing to fear anymore. I had nothing to fear anymore, because Jesus Christ is my God. He's my Savior. He is my protector, you know. And I basically gave up all of that help, all of those, you know, all of that backup, everything that I had. I just let it all go, and I said, you know what? I don't need that. I don't need that, because God will protect me, and I believe in all my heart, you know, that He will. I know that He will. And the way God has changed my life, it's like, you know, if you had a chance to speak to those people that have known me, you know, before and after, that have known my life before I gave my life to Him, and after, sometimes I sit back and I'm analyzing everything, and I'm looking at it, and I'm kind of like, I'm amazed at what God has done in my life. You know, when you actually allow Him to, when you fully surrender to Jesus Christ, He will work miracles in your life like you have no idea. You really need to let go of those things that are stopping you from allowing Him to, that are stopping you, you know, from getting to where you need to be, where you know you need to be. And before I knew it, you know, I started Bible studies in my house, and we started off with 3 people, and more people will start coming. You know, we ended up at a point where we had about 17, 18, 19 people at our Bible studies, and they're still going strong, you know. The Lord God gave me the opportunity to start preaching His word, you know, in the church, and I've become a preacher now, and you know, it's amazing, because I love sharing His word. I love going to people's houses and teaching them Bible studies. I love, you know, being in the pulpit and sharing the word of God, and sharing just what I'm doing now, sharing with everybody what He's done in my life, sharing with everybody, telling everybody that He is real. Jesus Christ is the Son of God. Jesus Christ came to die for you and me. Jesus Christ loves you more than you can ever imagine. He would rather spend, you know, He would rather be in hell than spend an eternity without you. You know, that's Jesus Christ. The sacrifice that He has done for you, you have no idea what He has actually done for you, you know. And now that I finally realized this, I love sharing this with people, you know, and God is good, you know. I've you know, we're doing a full-time ministry now, and you know, we're gonna join Preaching Place and start, you know, Preaching Place Sydney, and it's just beautiful, because, you know, just even when we started, you know, saying, yeah, like, we want to be a part of this, like, we're just seeing how God is putting all of these people together, you know, and He's building a team. He's building a group of soldiers that are willing to go out there and preach His word, and He's given me an opportunity to do that. And you know what? I don't deserve that. I don't deserve to even be speaking right here, right now, and telling you this story. I don't deserve this whatsoever. That's how good God is. That He gives you what you don't deserve. That love, that sacrifice that He did, none of us deserve that. You know, the Bible tells us that we have all sinned and we all fall short of the glory of God. And when you start to realize these things, if it doesn't change your heart, if something doesn't happen in here, I don't understand, man. It's like you must have a cold heart or something, you know, because that's something that when I hear that, when I listen to that, when I know that, it really tells me, you know, that I have a Father who is in heaven that knows who I am. I have a Father who is in heaven that loves me and is willing to give his life just so that I can be with him, reunited with him one day, because sin that you do, that sin separates you from God, you know? The sin separates you from God. You know, Jesus Christ can't be around sin. So if you're living in sin, you can't be with God. And he gave his life so that you can have an opportunity to be with him, because he wants to be with you more than you can ever imagine. So I just want to leave it with you, you know, to make a decision that if there's something in your life, you know, that you know needs to change, if there's things in your life that you know need to go, if you know that your relationship with Christ is not where it should be, if you're in the church and you're, you know, going to the nightclubs and drinking and doing all the things that you know you shouldn't be doing, you know, I was there. Don't ever give up hope, you know, and seek the Lord like you have never sought him before. The Bible says that those who diligently seek him with all their heart, they will find him. I'm here to tell you that you can and you will find Jesus Christ, just like I found Jesus Christ, when you seek him with all your heart, but you need to be sincere. So I pray that this testimony is a blessing to those who hear it. And keep me in your prayers, please. Keep our ministry, Preaching Place, in your prayers. Because last thing I want to leave you with, the end is coming. The end is so near. And Jesus Christ is soon to return to this earth. He is coming back. Please look at your lives, analyze what you're doing with your life. And especially if you've been someone who's been privileged to have truth, if you have had the privilege to know the truth, to know the three angels' message, to know the truth about God's law, I beg you to please rethink your life and decide, make a decision for Jesus Christ, make a commitment for him. And it's hard, and you might think that he's not going to take you back. Yes, he will take you back. He took me back. What makes you think he won't take you back? He will take you back. Jesus loves you. So that's my story. And I look forward to seeing every single one of you one day on the sea of glass in front of our Lord Jesus Christ. May the Lord be with you.